mentioning, you guys can derive a form, all right, that kind of gets you in a direction that you're trying to go in. So for example, you guys might also find my pencil. So this was kind of a letter G, right? You could do something that could be a star. Okay, so both of these are just shapes. This one's curvilinear, this one is straight. In and of itself, this is not sufficient to make a polygonized folded object, but the process of converting this to polygonal forms is where you can start to make the transition. So for example, we'll start with this letter G. And actually what I think I'm going to do is make a bigger one. All right. Or maybe it'd be better if I didn't do a letter, if it was just a form. Okay, so it still looks sort of like a G, but it's not exactly a G, so it's just kind of this form that I've created. And so what I want you guys to see is how this can be translated into a series of polygons. Okay, so I'm going to take this and put it over top of it. Right, and the very first step that I'm going to undertake is going to be in taking these curvilinear lines and turning them into straight lines. And so I'm going to take one and point at it like this. And I'm going to point another one this way. Take another one there. All right, and so do you guys see the relationship between these two shapes? So you see how this one is basically that one turned into straight, smooth lines? Yeah? Okay, so that kind of takes you through the first step, right, of taking something and turning it into the beginnings of a polygonal form. So the next thing that we're going to do is actually start to look at how this thing might translate into a polygonal element. Okay, so I might start to look at this as potentially kind of creating a shape . It could be something like this. And so that starts to kind of create these series of polygons, but it still isn't quite working to create the joints and stuff that need to be created. And so I'm going to basically kind of use that one as a stepping stone to trying to create something that we can use. You can see how I've taken lines and I've converted them into sort of polygons, right? But that in and of itself will not fold. That basically is sort of a flat cutout. So now at this next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to think of it in terms of transitioning from one line to the next. So as an example, right, I have a line here and a line here. And if I need to transition between those two with a fold, then part of what I have to do is I have to find the bisecting angle that's halfway between these two. So that'll be the first thing. And I think maybe I'll do that with red. So an angle that's halfway between the two is about right there. Right? So that distance or that angle and that angle are pretty close to the same, not exact. Right? So the next thing that I've got to do is to find a perpendicular line to that one. And so right there I've created a perpendicular line to that one. All right? So now if I create a polygon using that line to come to that point, right? I also have a wall element. And that wall element can be used to create the next piece underneath it. And so I'll take another piece of this and set it down over top of it. Okay. Now the next piece is going to use halfway between these two, right? Between that line and that line, so that and that become the same angle. And then I've got to create a perpendicular line to that. So there's the perpendicular line, and what I have to do is I have to connect this one to these. Okay? So this is coming along, and it's going to fold under, and then it's going to come this way. And that, in turn, can either fold down or fold up and go in a different direction. But what I'll do is I'm going to link this corner to this one. And then link this corner to this one. And that becomes my next form. Okay? So I'm only going to take this out through 3 iterations so that you can see how it translates to cut board. So here's my next thing. So again, I'm going to take another piece of this, set it over top of it, and I'm going to find that interim angle between these two lines. Somewhere about like right there. Okay? And again, I have to do something that is perpendicular to these two, to this one. So I'm going to kind of draw a line. You see how it makes that cross? In each case, it's sort of making that cross. So then I'm going to take that point and connect it to those. I think what I'll do just to clarify things is I'm going to fatten up where the wall is. So there is where my wall is. I'll do that on the one underneath it. And actually, before I move this thing out of the way, I'm going to use a fine point, red, so that I can kind of outline what's beneath it. There's a line here. And there's another line here. Okay. So there's my top form. Next I'll do this one. So my folding wall for this one, there's one at either end. Right? So there's one here. And one over here. This one is that one. Right? See? And just for the heck of it, I'm going to go ahead and do a fine line of the piece beneath it. So what I'm drawing for you guys right now, or what I'm doing, is showing you a process, right? An invented process for creating one of these folded pieces. There's that. That's number, I'm going to call this 2. This one we'll call 3. Right, so there is 2 and 3. And then finally I have 1. And 1 just simply has a 1 wall here. Okay? Does that make sense? So now I'm going to take these 3 pieces, and this one I'm going to label as 1, right? And I'm going to cut these out and start to create, 3 of the however many levels there are, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 6, in this geometry, there's 6 levels. Okay? Notice that in every case, the forms are tapering. You see that? Do you see that in every case there are 2 acute and 2 obtuse angles? All right, I'm going to set these off to the side. How many minutes are we at? All right, go ahead and stop it.